Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Looks like we're presently live. Welcome to the Boxcast program today. Looks like everything's up and running. I'll go ahead and get our local recording going here. There we go. See if that. Oops. Okay. So, again, thanks for joining. And I've decided to do, and I'm gonna share here shortly. Check our monitors while I'm doing this. As I have in the introduction, there's always a lot of things trending in the institutional church. And so I found myself over and over again wanting to take time out of my busy schedule to post a video or write an article in regard to what's going on. As I put in my introduction, a lot of times it's just too rich. So, however, I also find myself thinking, well, we cover that in the book. That's chapter such and such. So, there's really, we've been researching the institutional church or church for, something going on 11 years now. There's not a whole lot new under the sun. And we really worked hard in this book, The Church Lie, to do a comprehensive overview of everything we've learned over the past 11 years. And, of course, the title, The Church Lie and the Biblical Alternative. So rather than writing a bunch more articles and posting a bunch more videos, for now anyway, in regard to all these things that are constantly trending in the church and what they mean to us, I decided to do a book review of sorts, all right, during the week from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, which presently fits into my schedule for this month. And that'll run through the end of this week, 1 to 2. It might change up a little bit next week. The weekends I'm usually too busy to do anything. And yes, we'll have, I'll be joined in the book review by Shirley. So, 1 to 2 during the week. That might change up next week. But for today, and tomorrow, let me see, today's Tuesday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I've gone ahead and set up programs for the rest of the week. So it's going to be a book review of sorts. For those of you who are too lazy to read the book yourself, all you got to do is tune in, or perhaps I shouldn't say that, perhaps you're just too busy to sit down and read, or by the end of the day when you do have reading time, you're just too tired. Understood. This way too, other than the page that we have on Facebook where we discuss the book, this will be great for discussion as well. And so if you go to tank.online, tank.tanc.online, which is our ministry hub, All of our links are there, and you can read the book for free online. All right. You can kind of review it and be ready for these programs to ask questions and do inputs. Put some input there, and or you can buy it on Shopify. Okay. I'll be using the spiral bound version, of which we're out of stock on right now. But we can get them in pretty quick if needed. Two ways you can communicate with us as we do this daily book review during the week. And I see Andy's with us on Facebook, and of course on this is also live on our Facebook page. Do join us on Facebook, either at Andy and I, or as a friend, or join up, or like the page, or whatever. So, two ways you can join in is join Andy or I's Facebook page and do a chat with us. Okay. On Facebook, post comments where on the comment page where we're live on Facebook. You can also post comments there. That's a good place to interact. Or you can email us at mail@tanc.online. That's mail@tanc.online. I'll keep an eye on our email monitor here in case you want to shoot us an email. All right. Let me see here. So we're gonna check around. I got a few notices here. Kind of figure out what those might be. I don't want to miss anything. All right. So, like, you can go to our the Church Live page as well, and we can have live interaction there in the comment section. Okay. Now, what almost prompted me to do a video or write an article was this recent article that was posted in the Daily Herald by an associate of James MacDonald. This let me see here, what's the fellow's name? WALS, whatever that is, by the way, radio personality, Mancal Mueller, is that his name? Of Willamette, has attended Harvest Bible Study anyway, the guy's a radio commentator, wrote some article entitled Speaking My Truth to Harvest Bible Chapel's Pastor James. I spoke on this on a vid a couple days or so, but one of the personalities that was at the center of the latest Harvest Bible or Bible Harvest drama that's going on, Harvest Bible Chapel and their conglomerate of churches around the Chicago, Illinois area and down in Florida. One of the figures or personalities that was at the center of the newest trending church drama was this Julie Roys, okay, who Harvest Bible Chapel had actually sued and then withdrew the lawsuit, and she posted about the article, and there is like on her Facebook page, and There's only 61 comments and 92 shares. I'm surprised. Of course, that's 62 comments in regard to most relevant. If you put all on there, I don't know how many comments that we've got most relevant. Let's do all comments and see what we get. And I got my nifty little screen working here. So, oops. All comments. Okay. Alright. All comments. Now, if I can scroll up. Still 61 comments and 21 shares. Probably, it looks like, the very first comment here is by our beloved John Emmel. And, which is ironic, I suppose. And John Emmel is an associate with Tank Ministries and our research organization. And he says in the first comment, yawn, how many times does modern American piety have to experience this story until they finally realize it is the root doctrines that are the driving force of the tyranny? Shrug, he says, Christians get the leadership they deserve. Okay? And, of course, I think our ministry has all but abandoned this whole victim thing. You know, boy, I don't want to sound unloving, but we really have abandoned this whole thing with feeling sorry for churchians that become victims of, the rotten fruit that is church. Okay, now, gosh, being anti-church, which we are, and I got to back up a little bit, because if you know who Phil Johnson is the right-hand man of John MacArthur Jr. down there in on the West Coast, okay, what is that, Grace to You Ministries and all this, and the Grace to You Radio, John MacArthur. He's kind of John MacArthur's right-hand man. And he made a comment on his Facebook page one time that I, quote, hated the church, all right? And at the time, I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of comment I would expect from somebody who has no argument for what we're proclaiming and teaching, other than to say that I hate the church. And in other words, I hate God. See, with them, you can't separate the two. To have any kind of relationship with God, it's also got to be with the church, which is his salvific authority on earth, per church orthodoxy, Protestant orthodoxy, if you will, all right? And, I got to make a confession right here and now. I do hate church, okay? I do hate church. And by no stretch of the imagination does that mean that I also then hate God. No, I love God. God is my Father, all right? And I think He was my Father in a literal sense before I even knew it, okay? Because when I was first truly born again, and ignorant of a lot of theology, intuitively, I understood the concept of new birth. It's just where I started getting into trouble as a Christian and got to where, as a Christian, I was scraping the bottom of the pickle barrel is when I started going to church. Of course, I didn't know any better. That's all our culture knows in having a relationship with God. And then worst yet, I went to seminary, which can be a cemetery spiritually for a lot of Christians, okay? So, I do hate the church. I think it's an evil, wicked institution. Now, that doesn't mean that I hate everyone in the church in particular, or that I hate anyone in the church at all. I don't even hate Phil Johnson. I don't even hate James McDonald, okay? And you know, there's a lot of fodder for hate there, okay? But I just don't, my heart of hearts, I don't. But the church is an institution, and its fruit and everything it represents, and its lies and its falsehood, I do hate it, okay? You know, in my book, as I state in this book, every time I drive past a church, a purpose-built church building, I look at it and I say it's just a lie. By virtue of the fact that it's a building for professing Christians to meet on Sunday, by that element, or by virtue of that alone, it's a lie. Okay? I must say that's one of the few times, if not the only time, I have agreed with Phil Johnson. So anyway, we've got this very good comment by John Emmel here that's spot on. I think I might have a comment. And let me see here. Wrong one there. Okay. And we got Newsbusters going on live. We don't want that. Okay, let me see what we have here. Okay. So, at any rate, what really tempted me to do a vid, or a boxcast vid, was all of these comments here. Alright? And the heck of it is, though, is that I started to realize, and I was going to have 2 or 3 hours in picking apart all these comments, which are just absolutely classic, okay? Especially the one that churches are so man-centered, okay? And, you know, when everything's going well, churchians have no qualms whatsoever of making it man-centered in every regard, in referring to the elders and the men as men of God. All right, which, you know, unless we humble ourselves and put ourselves under their authority, we are not part of the body of Christ, which again, I address that in the book. But these people have it both ways. When the leadership, or God's anointed, who we're not to touch, really, you know, pull off a boner, okay, really do something that is just like totally out there, and truths like this article come out, all of a sudden the question is, do we follow a man or God? And that's just what gets me. Here's the way they pose the question, and it's so deceptive, so much cognitive dissonance in it. Or do you follow a man or God? Notice how, because this guy says in this article, Man Cal Muir, I guess is his name, he was called out for going back to Harvest Bible Chapel, which one he goes to. I guess the main one outside of Chicago, and then there's one in Chicago, and like 8 or 9 others, and then one down in Florida and other places, I guess. You know, the campus thing. And he was called out for actually going back to that church. And his rhetorical question to push back against that was, you know, were we following a man or God? Notice how church is absolutely synonymous with following God. Okay? It's such a lie. And on the one hand, you've got, and by the way, we've got several videos of James MacDonald and some of the things that his elders have said and done and announcements. We did screen video shots, screen recordings of videos, and archived them because we knew they would be pulled down. And one is, and I mean, people really, this sermon that we have a vid copy of 5 things that parishioners, it titled something like a sermon that MacDonald preached in his church, 5 things that parishioners don't know about their pastor that the pastor wished they knew. Oh my goodness. I mean, I was embarrassed for this guy, and I'm not even him. I'm sitting out here in Xenia, Ohio, and I'm just watching this thing, and I'm like mortified, okay? And I'm not even him, and this is a totally different. I am mortified that somebody amongst humanity would get up and say the things that he said in there. It was just embarrassing, all right? And it's like, folks, it's just absolutely incredible that somebody like MacDonald can get up and preach a message like that and not empty out at least half of the congregation. It's just amazing, okay? So, the introduction of the church lie, all right, the introduction of the church lie addresses the exact same things that are said in a lot of these comments here, okay? And if you scroll down through the comments, you'll find me challenging people. There's a lot of people, I would leave that church, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you know, according to church orthodoxy, you really can't leave any given church without the permission of the elders or you'll be excommunicated, which means, basically, according to church orthodoxy, Protestantism, if you will, these people are in charge of your salvation, okay? And in regard to the stupid stuff that they do, and their evil, rotten fruit, and the things that they do in regard to all of that, it's like, well, we're all sinners saved by grace. All of this is addressed in the book. So hopefully, this series or of vids I'm going to do, it is a reading of the book. So I hope it's not too boring because I'm like reading to you, but we'll try to connect it with what's trending to make it interesting, and you can make it interesting by chiming in on the comments and or emails or on Facebook chat, however you want to do that. And a lot of work went into this book to make it comprehensive. So, let me see here. Let's get going here. I'm going to read the back of the book, okay, which is kind of an introduction to the introduction. And it says, everything you thought church is, it isn't. The belief that church is the body of Christ, the true gospel, the assembly of Christ, God's people, the elect of God, the kingdom of God, a light for God in a dark world, the bride of Christ, the love of God, and guided by the Bible are given assumptions that go without saying until now. Now, what that paragraph right there represents is the 10 of the 11 theses of the book. I'm not going to stop and go through and count, but there should be 10 of them. All right. And if you go to chapter 1, there's a page to the left that isn't in the context, okay? And it's on page 12. And it was stuck in there later as an afterthought because we wanted to make the book as concise, as clear as possible, okay? So, there to the left, we have the chapter theses, a thesis statement for each chapter, okay? And then chapter 1 is on page 13, okay? And let me check out chat here, all right? Because it says there's a new message. That may be accurate or not. Oftentimes it's not. All right. All right. And I'll check email one more time. All right. Check spam in case it's a first-time mailer. Okay, nothing there. Okay. So, second paragraph on the introduction to the introduction. In fact, church hijacked Christianity long ago. And that's why I want to do a book review. Okay? Because in this book, Andy and I are really big on defining objective statements, okay? And this is a biggie. This is a biggie. And a lot of these fundamental, descriptive, definitive, objective statements in and of themselves could define the whole book. It's our belief that church, and I don't like the term institutional church, okay? And we also reject the term home church. And, you know, this is going to be good because we're going to go through this book, and these vids are going to really articulate what we've written in the book and make for a really good video review, okay? So, in fact, church hijacked Christianity long ago. Church hijacked Christianity. So true. Church comes along in the 4th century and hijacks Christianity. Okay? Church doesn't hijack church. Church hijacks true Christianity. That is so true. And what this book will hopefully do is prompt people to just blow up the whole thing, okay, walk away from it, and build the biblical alternative, all right? The biblical alternative is vastly different than church tradition, okay? We also reject home church because home church, along with the unchurching group and this, that, and the other, and we can get into conversations about that when the time comes, unchurching the group, home church, is church in a home, okay? They've changed the buildings, okay, but it's still church, all right? And that's a problem. We'll get into more of that as we work through the book. In the church life, Paul Dosey and Andrew Young deconstruct 10 major presuppositions that define church. And then the 11th thesis is the biblical alternative. All right? Today's church has no real doctrinal or historical connection to the New Testament Assembly of Christ. Yeah. What we see in church today is, it's not connected to the book of Acts. What we see in the institutional church today, Protestant church, the Catholic church, is not historically connected to the book of Acts or the Gospels or anything else. Folks, there's like a 300-year gap, okay? And in some detail in one of the chapters, might be 3, we go through using literature from the time to break down what unfolded and what the difference in the Assembly of Christ and the Assembly of Christ and church does today. So again, what we're saying here is that the truth is, and I think about that meme with the older lady looking over her PC with her glasses up saying, "You mean it's all a lie?" Yes, it's all a lie. All right? So, today's church has really no doctrinal or historical connection to the New Testament Assembly of Christ. Church doesn't appear in history for more than 300 years after the birth of Christ's assembly at Pentecost. So, what does the real assembly look like? And how do we return to its true gospel and family mode of operation? And what should we expect if we do? Okay? So that's the introduction on the back to the introduction. Okay? I want to check email here. Not saying anything there. Not saying anything there. Okay. We can kind of do that out of there. Okay. So, alright. And by the way, where I posted this on Paul's Passing Thoughts, the Tank Ministry blog, you can post comments there to where we post that. So lots of places to comment and give input. And we know that several people read the book. Hey, give us your input. Okay? Give us your input. And we've gotten some input on the book that's really encouraging because it's kind of like this. Alright? People who read our stuff is compared to people who associate with us in public is a pretty vast difference. So we know people are listening, but we understand that this is a message that people aren't exactly getting in line to associate themselves with. And we know as long as we relentlessly keep hitting the hammer of truth on all of this, we know that'll change with time. Okay? As our ministry moves forward, that's changing more and more. And I'll just take a second right here to give a hearty thanks to people in their busy schedules who really make it a point to make sure that we're encouraged by knowing that we're not alone in all of this. And a faithful group of people once a year come from all over the country and spend all kinds of money to come to our online conference every year. Okay? And so that's awesome. Okay? So we continue in our looking at the introduction, and those comments and that I pointed out on that lady blogger's website and this, that, and the other, you can read those comments and then think about what we wrote in the introduction, and it's very instructive. I actually did a separate video where I'm scrolling down on all of those comments, and I might post the video. I might upload it to YouTube and post it, because, you know, the ahas that you see in those comments in this introduction are just time after time after time after time. All right, so we're going to read the introduction, and if there's more that we need to discuss about the introduction, we'll discuss it tomorrow. Okay? All right, so in the introduction, Dandy and I write, in life, at times, we come to a conclusion about something or someone famous, and our response can even be considered a cliche. You mean it's all a lie? This does not concern one particular lie. It concerns a motif built on a foundation of lies and supported by lies, such as church. Okay? And again, I saw some stuff the other day trending in social media and whatnot. Usually I don't have a lot of time to get into that stuff, but people email me stuff, and it's like, oh, too rich, I gotta address that. It's all in the book. Okay? So rather than spending a bunch of time I don't have right now to repeat what, oh gosh, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm guilty. I'll write articles that the subject is something that I've written on 7 or 8 times over the past 11 years. I mean, we've got like over 4,000 articles and videos posted on this stuff. Okay? So, second paragraph, the problem with things traditionally famous found wanting is the culture's investment. Rich and lazy thinking and bankrupt concerning critical thinking flavored with naive trust. Still, it is an investment nevertheless. Parishioners heavily invest in the church lie to the point where they cannot bear the thought of leaving it. To do so leads to painful admissions. No one wants to believe she has been misled for so many years. People don't want to think they invested in a lie and wasted their time on a lie. People don't want to look foolish. Therefore, they make excuses for their unfortunate investment. So, irregardless of how ridiculous church becomes and its fruit, okay, we find that people have invested maybe 30, 40, 70 years of their life in it, and they don't want to throw all that away. They want to salvage it. Okay? That's one reason. Okay? Secondly, they don't want to look stupid. Understood. Myself, or me and Andy, I'm not going to speak for Andy, but I know for myself, I'm a little bit different. Because from the very beginning, I knew there wasn't something exactly right about church. I could just never put my finger on it. But because I loved God and wanted to pursue God, I didn't know anything else. I didn't know anything else to do. Okay? So, we look, in the introduction then, we go into some of the excuses. One excuse is the true things told by the perpetrators. Since the perpetrators spoke the truth every now and then, the lies can now be deemed as unfortunate or subordinate truth. You ever heard that one? That, quote, men have disagreed about for hundreds of years. We must, therefore, take from the shelf what is good. This is a quote. Take from the shelf what is good and leave the bad on the shelf. And, after all, quote, all truth is God's truth. Like most excuses, this is flawed reasoning because truth has a moral aspect to it. True facts can be, and often are, used in the commission of an inequitable scheme. Therefore, the residual facts used, though true, don't add any virtue to the scheme. Right? Okay? If the guy's in the ministry for the money, you don't continue following the guy when he's obviously in the ministry for the money because he says good things. Hitler said good things, believe it or not. In the case of church, it can be argued that even facts are scarce in the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on mankind. All right, and it is. Church really is the biggest fraud perpetrated on mankind, second only to socialism. And I want to say something to that. Okay? And this goes back to John's statement. Apparently, we've got 5,000 troops amassed on the border of, what is it, Argentina or whatever it is. My attitude has changed about that. Okay? And as far as church victims too. No. Individuals and the collective individuals need to start taking responsibility for the government they have. Sheep must start taking responsibility for their sheepism or nothing's going to change. Okay? So, we have a comment here. Okay? And let's see if I can see what it is. Let me see. A friend sent me this today. You probably can't see it there very well. We might click on the article and see what it is. My response, this is not surprising. Religious institutions follow collectivism ideologies, and we get into that in the book. Stay tuned. Collectivism versus individualism. I believe we get into that maybe chapter 2 or something. Okay? The institution collective must be protected at all costs at the expense of the individual. So if a few sexually abused church members have to be sacrificed to that so that SGM can survive, then so be it. And this is why I'm doing this. We get into that in the book, okay? The book, covers everything, except, and I was almost tempted to hold off on the publishing to add this in, Andy and I failed to put in a chapter about, here it is, historical precedent. Historical precedent. In the near future, there will be a chapter added to the book on so-called historical precedent, okay? And I'm probably going to add that as an addendum rather than a chapter, because to add another chapter of the book is going to require massive reformatting, and not only do I not want to do that, I don't have time. Okay? Continuing in our introduction, and before I do that, okay, I'll go ahead and click on this link Andy sent me, and we'll see what it is. Is it going to load? Okay, it's some kind of picture there. I don't know what that's all about. We're going to ignore that. Okay. Let me see what we got here. Together for the Gospel, and they got like a $sign in gospel. But church is an institution, people. Okay? And you can't separate the money from the institution. And if you all got too much freedom, the church isn't going to be able to pay its bills. Okay? Let's get rid of this down here. Let me see here. Silence in the face of evil, of itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act. Unknown, frequently attributed to Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Yeah, it looks like an interesting article, one that we might have to point to in conjunction with what we're talking about here. It looks pretty interesting. Let's continue in our introduction here. Like most excuses, this is flawed reasoning because truth has a moral aspect to it. True facts can be and often are used in the commission of an inequitable scheme. Therefore, the residual facts used, though true, don't add any virtue to the scheme. In the case of church, it can be argued that even facts are scarce in the biggest fraud ever perpetrated on mankind. This is in contrast to Christ's true assembly that uses the law lawfully. I would say according to love. Then there is the diversity excuse. This excuse, so our first excuse is that, James MacDonald, bless his heart, he says a lot of good things. And, nobody's perfect, and you just gotta take off the shelf what's good, and what isn't good, just leave on the shelf. Okay? Then there is the diversity excuse. That is the all truth is God's truth sort of excuse. Then there's the diversity excuse. The excuse for not rethinking church can be likened to a tree. All the branches are different, and none of the fruit thereof shares exact same shape and size, but overall they are the product of a basic root system. Church is the same tree, but the diversity of its branches and fruits supply an excuse for its evil. And here we go. Our church doesn't believe that. That's what the Baptists believe. We're Presbyterian. Gee, that sounds like a cult. And of course, our church isn't a cult because, well, it's a church. Okay, or, oh my, that sounds like a high controlling church. Not us, okay? I understand your concern, okay? And this is classic. I understand your concern, but not all of our elders would agree with that position, okay? But all of our elders wouldn't agree with that position. Boy, Clear Creek Chapel, and another book I will highly recommend to you, if I got it here handy. No, I'm not saying it. Religious Tyranny, a Case Study. I do believe that's in our free library, or you can purchase it on Tank Publishing link on tank.com. I go into how Clear Creek Chapel is a good example of, that's the biggest excuse. Bottom line is, elders can get up and teach anything they want to, and if you call them out on it, well, all of our, and it's such a deception, because the whole thing that they sell you on a church being led by a group of elders is accountability. In reality, they use that group or a plurality of elders to not be accountable to any objective truth whatsoever. Period. Okay? What drove me nuts at Clear Creek Chapel is the elders, any individual elder could teach any stinking thing he wanted to, and when you called him out on it, what you heard was, well, all of our elders wouldn't agree with that. Okay? And church goes on. All right, so, so also what is said about the horrible testimonies of the church. So we got the diversity, okay, the diversity argument. So, let's keep track of our arguments here. They're all in that stream. So we have the diversity argument, okay, the all God's truth is God's truth, and then there's this next argument. What is said about the horrible testimony of the church fathers? Well, and here we go. They were men of their times. As far as the horrible history of the church, they were men of their time. Okay, this is the historical norm excuse. You keeping track of your excuses? This excuse in particular reminds us of the genius we would expect from deity. The growth history of a tree at any specific point doesn't redefine what evil is nor excuse it. If the fruit is rotten, the tree was bad from the beginning and will be to the end. As Christ said, a tree is known by its fruit. Next on the list, which by no means is comprehensive, is the authority excuse. And this is the biggest one. We do not look past the pastor's expertise. To do so would question the competence that we trust so dearly and relieves us of responsibility to think for ourselves. As coined by author John Emmel, thinking is hard. Sure, glaring problems are so evident that we stumble on them from time to time, but since the pastor is not concerned with it, it must not be significant. We do not look beyond the authority of church because this authority, as we have come to believe, is an authority over our eternal well-being. We do not see past church because it is the only way to heaven regardless of any and every fault, supposedly. All right? So, by far, this is the biggest excuse, the big one, church authority. Okay? And boy, you hear that a lot. And, of course, when Churchians say the Bible is their authority, really what they're saying is what the elders say the Bible says is their authority. Okay, what's next? What's next? Neither do we look past our inability or total depravity, for this is the next excuse, total inability, right? The inability of the individual, all right? Neither will we look past our inability or total depravity, the premise for authority to begin with, because though there seems to be severe problems with the church, it must be our over-concern based on failure to understand. This is the inability excuse posing as humbleness. These reasons for not pondering the church's unsettling testimony are a fallacy. The indictment against the church includes a complaint about every element of its existence. It is an indictment against the entire body of church thought, and the evidence is not complicated or hidden to any degree. The only thing that hides its elementary error, and we're not going to get through the introduction today, which is fine. We'll hit up on the introduction again tomorrow, is a failure to think. The lies are not strong deceptions, and this is another great point in the introduction, okay? Once you begin to look at things carefully and think on your own, these aren't even strong deceptions. These are like elementary, in-your-face, obvious deceptions, okay? Which, when people begin to realize the elementary contradictions and untruth of church, I think it will provoke them to dig in, because it's embarrassing, okay? And we get into more and more of that as the book unfolds. The secular world rightly assesses those of the church stripe as egregiously, or hold on, let me finish the paragraph above. The lies are not strong deceptions. The lies are elementary. They bear no elevated level of evil genius. There is no real excuse. It is a lack of love for truth and intellectual sloth. Don't miss that, okay? It is a lack of love for truth. A lack of love for truth and intellectual sloth, okay? Which, a shortcoming in love for the truth will lead to intellectual sloth, okay? The secular world rightly assesses those of the church stripe as egregiously illogical and naive. Furthermore, church orthodoxy, when seen for what it is, befuddles one that it is even taken seriously as truth, much less endowed with gargantuan infrastructure and holy folklore. And we're going to stop there. Our live streaming for today is about to run out. Give us some input through the avenues that I discussed, and we will see you again tomorrow at 1 o'clock, God willing the creek don't rise. And until then, go forth, love God and others aggressively with no fear of condemnation. Good afternoon.